I want to welcome everybody to beautiful downtown Lexington, Kentucky. I'm Eric Steenstra, the Executive Director of the Hemp Industries Association. Very, very happy to have all of you here this morning. Quickly on HIA, we've really been experiencing incredible growth since the Farm Bill was signed into law by President Obama in February of 2014. Just seen a huge surge of new people coming into the industry. And so we've grown about over 250% in the last 2 years. Pretty excited about the attendance here today. I just wanted to note that we've got people coming from all over the place, including 3 or 4 from Hawaii and 1 from Alaska, and even some international folks from Australia and Finland. So a lot of people from Kentucky I know in the room, but we definitely have a wide group of people. So this is our 22nd annual conference, and this is the first conference that the HIA has been able to do in a state where hemp was growing. And so that's pretty exciting. It's something we imagined for a long time. Yeah. So just a brief background on Kentucky. I mean, obviously a lot of you know that Kentucky has an incredible history. One of our board members, Kevin Greenwood, was walking around last night around the city, and he saw this sign, or he saw a statue there, and he took a look at it, and as he started to read it, it wasn't about hemp specifically, but it was about this John Hunt Morgan, that he was an owner of a hemp factory and woolen mill. And so you can see that hemp history is just embedded here in Kentucky. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the Kentucky pioneers too. Some of the people that really got this started, that were working on this over 20 years ago and first talking about hemp. Of course, there's Gatewood Galbraith. We got, you know, Gatewood was one of the most vocal promoters of hemp here in the state of Kentucky, and a lot of people did learn about hemp through Gatewood, and unfortunately he's not here to be with us today, but we want to remember and thank Gatewood for all the work that he did to educate. There's a lot of other people too. Louis Nunn is in the picture there with Woody Harrelson and Joe Hickey. He was a former governor of Kentucky, Republican governor, who was very supportive of hemp back in the day. Craig Lee, of course, Senator Joey Pendleton, Andy Graves, Jake Graves. There's a lot more. I could go on and name a number of others, but I just want to pay tribute to a lot of the pioneers, and also to the folks that are pioneers today. You know, we've got a lot of new people coming into this industry. People like Mike Lewis, Josh Hendricks, Tatiana Gildersleeve, Katie Moyer. And again, I can't name everybody here, but I just want to pay tribute to that. There's a lot of exciting things that are happening, a lot of people that are doing good work to continue this tradition here in Kentucky. So I want to bring Andy Graves up. Andy, where are you? All right. Just want to bring Andy Graves up to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning, and welcome to my hometown, Lexington, Kentucky. It is a pleasure. You have no idea what a pleasure it is to see so many faces gathered under the same roof that want to talk about a really special plant. You're in Lexington, and this is central Kentucky, and you are in the heart of hemp country. I don't know, Eric alluded a little bit. I'll give you a real quick rundown. We do a lot of things with vices in this state. We gamble. We make a lot of whiskey. Thoroughbred horses is a mainstay. But make no mistake, the beautiful homes that you may see in the countryside, they weren't built, the older ones were not built with money realized from horses or realized from tobacco. Because before there was tobacco, there was hemp. It is what built all of this town, and you just have to walk around and see. Not more than 1,500 feet from where we are is Gratz Park. And in the early 1800s, Gratz Park was full of people who were in the hemp manufacturing business. Now, times have changed, and that whole area is full of doctors and lawyers, so that only tells you how times have changed. So I'm Andrew Garaves, and you saw me when I was younger with red hair, and you know how long it takes to make hemp happen in the United States, so now I'm white-headed. We're all doing a lot of work. I I'm the CEO for a company, a startup company called Atalo Holdings. There are about 7 people. Some you know, some you don't. Joe Hickey being one that you know, Dave Spalding. Those are 2 names that have been involved in trying to make hemp happen in the landscape for the last 20 years. We're still doing it, only today things have changed. You know, we are actively working like crazy to organize growers. But you know, we're not the only ones that are organizing and doing things. A lot of people in this room have been working like crazy all year long in this state. I'd like to congratulate all of those people, but most importantly today, we wouldn't be doing it if not for the efforts of the man that I'm going to introduce to you. James Comer took this issue on after the time when Louis and myself and my father and Joe Hickey, we took it as far as we could go. Jamie wanted to enter the political scene, and he took the issue up and he brought it to the forefront once again. But at that moment, you're in a state where the people were pretty versed in the subject, as opposed to maybe some other states where the people are not. We don't look at it, we never did look at it as anything other than a farming crop. It was just the federal officials that gave it what looked like a black eye. Why they did that, I'll never know, but it's been erased from the landscape for over 70 years. But now it's a major part of the landscape and gaining ground all the time. James Comer, under his reign, I'll say, I don't think he's a king, but he's done a super job of organizing the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. He took the issue on, he explained it, he took all the hard questions. He did everything that a real leader needs to do. He remained calm above and beyond it all. It is a fledgling industry, but make no mistake, he's the guy who helped get it jump-started to reality, to seed to dirt, not just conversation. So please join me in welcoming James Comer, the Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for that overly generous introduction, Andy. And to all the out-of-state visitors that are here today, welcome to Kentucky, the leading industrial hemp producing state in the United States of America. And it feels good to say that because there were a lot of days that I didn't know or never would dream that we would be able to say that. And as Commissioner of Agriculture in an agriculture state, it gives me a lot of pride to be able to say that. And I know that we have many employees in here from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture that have worked closely with everybody in this room to make this a reality, and we look forward to the future. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. What they asked me to do was say a few things about how we got here, the current status of hemp in Kentucky, talk a little bit about the future, and then answer any questions if anybody has any questions. But one question that a lot of people ask from day one on this is why hemp? Why would a Commissioner of Agriculture talk about hemp? And the short answer is because it's the right thing to do. I grew up, we grew up in South Central Kentucky, family farming operation, and when I was growing up in my home area, we had a pretty good economy. That economy was based on 2 things: manufacturing jobs and tobacco. And that was in the late 80s. I'm just turned 43 years old. Then in 92, a couple of things happened. Number one, we had NAFTA, and that significantly changed manufacturing in my part of the state. There were garment manufacturers everywhere. If you wanted a job, you could get a job, and it was a good job at that time in a garment factory. Or if you farm, you could grow tobacco. And as we all know, those of us from Kentucky, those of us that are familiar with the tobacco industry, in Kentucky early on, every farm had a tobacco quota, a tobacco base. So every farming operation, whether you were in Western Kentucky, my part of the state, which is on the Tennessee state line in the Bowling Green area, or in Eastern Kentucky, or here in Central Kentucky, if you owned a farm, you grew tobacco, and that's how you paid for your Christmas presents, and that's how you had spending money at the end of the year. Well, the tobacco program changed, and tobacco shifted like so much of agriculture. Instead of every farmer growing some tobacco, it changed to where only a few very, very large farmers grew a lot of tobacco. Instead of tobacco being grown all over the state, it was grown in Western Kentucky, where the land is fertile and it's flat, and you can grow anything there and have good yield. There was a demand for two things in Kentucky, in rural Kentucky: manufacturing jobs and another crop to kind of try to replace tobacco. And I felt like with all my heart, hemp could be part of the solution. I'm not going to say hemp will be the solution, but I believe it's another tool in the toolbox for our family farmers. So in 2011, I ran for Commissioner of Agriculture. In Kentucky, it's like 13 states. We elect our Commissioner of Agriculture. And in 2011, it was not a good year to be a Republican. I'm a Republican. Those of you that are Democrats, I'm a friendly Republican. And after what I've been through this year, I may be closer to the other side than whatever. But anyway, in 2011, it wasn't a good year to be a Republican. And when you run for Commissioner of Agriculture, it's an odd election year, meaning there are no county elections or no federal elections. All that you have are state elections. So you have the governor's race, Attorney General, Secretary of State, Auditor, Treasurer, and Commissioner of Agriculture. Commissioner of Agriculture is at the bottom. And needless to say, people in Louisville and Lexington don't get real excited about who's running for Commissioner of Agriculture. And if you're running for Commissioner of Agriculture as a Republican, and you look and the rest of the down ballot's down 20 points to the Democrats, and you're at the bottom of the ticket, and no Republicans ever won a down ballot race, down ballot meaning Attorney General down to Ag Commissioner, in the history of Kentucky, unless the Republican won the governor's race, you got to think of things that are going to be outside the box. So looking at issues, what can we talk about in agriculture that would excite people? What can we talk about that would bring people together and get people in the urban areas interested about Commissioner of Agriculture? And I believe with all my heart, hemp could do that. Because if you look at the political spectrum, hemp is a unique issue. It was at the time. It's changed now because we've all worked together and we've evolved. But at the time, hemp was one of the very few issues that I could think of. It's the only issue in agriculture that united people on both ends of the spectrum. If you're a conservative, like my friend Judge Riley in Spencer County, and I appreciate you, John Riley, the county judge in Spencer County, has been a leader from day one, long before I ever came on the scene in hemp in Kentucky. If you're a conservative, hemp is an issue that shows this is a perfect example of government standing in the way of creating private sector jobs. This is the perfect example of government overreach. Government shouldn't even be in hemp. We shouldn't even be regulating hemp now in the Department of Agriculture. So this is a good issue if you're a conservative. If you're a liberal, hemp's the perfect issue for you because it's about sustainability. If you want to do things in a sustainable manner, hemp is more sustainable than cotton. Hemp is more sustainable than plastic. Hemp is more sustainable than trees. So hemp was an issue that united people on the left and on the right. So we announced during the campaign that I was going to support industrial hemp. Well, that was almost like saying I was for legalizing marijuana in a very conservative state. You've been seeing how conservative Kentucky is on the news lately in a little city called Moorhead. But we talked about it as a jobs creator. We talked about it as helping family farmers. We talked about it as helping the environment. So it got a lot of press. It was outside the box. Of course, the rest of the Republican ticket shied away from it. They didn't want to endorse that issue, and the Democrat ticket didn't want to endorse the issue either, so it helped me stand apart. And I really believe that issue helped me buck the trend. The rest of the Republican ticket in 2011 lost by, on average, of about 16 points. And I won by 28 points. And I believe that hemp was a good issue for me, but a lot of politicians come out with issues and then they get in office, they never want to do anything about it. And I talked with two great leaders in our federal delegation in Kentucky right after I took office, and one of them's represented here today, the other one may, but Mr. Porter's here representing Congressman Thomas Massey. And we appreciate Thomas Massey and his leadership on this issue. We talked to Congressman Massey, and I talked to Senator Rand Paul. And obviously Senator Paul's father, Ron Paul, had the legislation that Congressman Massey has now in D.C. for many years. And we talked about, I want this to be our centerpiece legislation. We want to make hemp a reality in the state. So at the State Fair in 2012, the Kentucky State Fair, which is put on by the Department of Agriculture, we announced that industrial hemp was going to be the #1 priority for the Kentucky Department of Agriculture in Kentucky. Needless to say, there were a lot of snickers, a lot of people rolling their eyes and things like that. To make a long story short, we filed Senate Bill 50, which was sponsored by Senator Paul Hornback. I'm sure he'll be at this conference at some point this week. He's a farmer in Shelby County, which isn't far from here. When we filed that bill, I like to say it had bipartisan opposition, meaning that the 4 key players in the state, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, were adamantly against it. The Republicans being the President of the Senate, Robert Stivers, who's a Republican. He voted against it both times when it passed, and then when it came back with the conference committee report, he voted against it both times. Congressman Hal Rogers, who's the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee in Washington, D.C., and the dean of the federal delegation in Kentucky. Then on the Democrat side, we had Governor Beshear was against it. In fact, he never even signed the bill when it passed. And Kentucky's different than in Washington. If the president refuses to sign a bill in Washington, that's called a pocket veto, and it's vetoed. But in Kentucky, if the governor doesn't sign the bill, he just doesn't sign the bill. The only way to veto the bill is to actually veto the bill. So in prime fashion of the governor, he didn't take a position either way on it, but the bill passed. Then Speaker of the House, Greg Stumbo, was against the bill. Who's a Democrat. So we had bipartisan opposition, but we put together a coalition of Democrats and Republicans. We had testify on the bill Senator Rand Paul, Congressman Thomas Massey, and Congressman John Yarmuth. And John Yarmuth is the one Democrat congressman from Kentucky in Louisville. He played golf with President Obama the other day. If you know anything about Congressman Yarmuth and Congressman Massey, they don't agree on a whole lot of issues. And it was just shocking to the legislature to see those two sitting together to try to come together on a controversial bill. Make a long story short, with many people in this room's help, we passed that legislation. Then we went to Washington, D.C., because Senate Bill 50 just set up a regulatory framework for Kentucky. We didn't want, there were a lot of people that wanted to say, let's just plant hemp, let's just defy the federal government. I didn't want to do that. We felt like we could get this done the way the Constitution was set up, and despite the federal government overreach and state government overreach and the political propaganda that was holding this back. We got the Farm Bill passed. We got Senator McConnell, of all people, to work to get language put in the Farm Bill to allow states that had set up regulatory frameworks to be able to produce and plant hemp in their states, which was shocking to people. In fact, about a month ago, during August, during the state fair, Senator McConnell called me and he said, we're going to UK, University of Kentucky. We're going to meet with President Eli Capilouto in front of their hemp research project. And he's going to give me an update on the research at hemp. Going to give Senator McConnell an update. So I went to that, and they had a platform with the hemp, which at this time was probably about 6.5 feet tall, behind us. And he wanted to take a picture. Senator McConnell wanted to take a picture in front of hemp. Can you believe that? And we walk up there with President Capilouto and Senator McConnell, and I'm just shocked because we all know what we've been through to try to get to this point. And now they want to take pictures with hemp in the background. And it looked, this particular variety of hemp looked a lot like its cousin, if you know what I mean. So we took the picture, and I looked at Senator McConnell. I said, did you ever think you would be wanting to take a picture with hemp in the background? And he's a nice guy. He's a little dry, and he's an expert on answering questions. His answer was no. So that was it. But we have to give Senator McConnell a lot of credit for passing the legislation. When we went to Washington to campaign, Congressman Massey took me around, introduced me to a lot of Republican congressmen. Congressman Yarmouth and Jonathan Miller took me around to meet with a lot of people in the Obama administration. And what I learned was the people in the Obama administration support hemp. They knew about hemp. We didn't have to educate people in the Obama administration about hemp. When we went in the Department of Energy, the lady that we met with wore a hemp dress in honor of our visit. When she said, do you know what my dress is? And I wanted to say it looked like hemp, but I thought it may be some kind of Chanel dress or something, and that might offend her. I said, no, I think I do, but she goes, it's hemp. I said, well, that's a good sign, because I'm going to skip a lot of my introduction then if you know what all hemp is. So we've come a long way. Today we still have obstacles. I know I was talking to the representative from Hawaii and representatives from other companies. The DEA we've made progress with the DEA. The DEA is still giving us fits. Those of you who kept up with what we did in Kentucky know that there was a big scandal when the DEA confiscated our hemp seeds, and there was a huge Twitter following. Many of you were on it. Hashtag free the seed. That was a big deal for 2.5 weeks, and that consumed the media in Kentucky for 2.5 weeks, where we get our seeds from the DEA. And of course we had to sue them in federal court, and you never know what you're going to get when you go to federal court. It never ceases to amaze me, some of the rulings that these judges rule. And when we were presenting the case, the judge didn't allow TV cameras in or anything like this, but I'm going to tell you what the judge said to the DEA. The judge asked the head of the representative, the attorneys for the DEA, why are you spending my tax dollars trying to confiscate legal hemp seeds when we've got a huge drug problem all across the state of Kentucky, and you're not doing a thing about it? When he said that, I thought, we're in business here. I think we're gonna be all right, and we were. And they're still trying to give us fits, but we've made some progress. The state police in Kentucky, even though all of our people that have license that are growing hemp in the state are doing it legally, we've been transparent with the law enforcement. We give the GPS quadrants of where the hemp's located. They still have the courtesy to stop and inspect them all the time, go on their property, and kind of be a little bit of a nuisance. But, you know, this is a work in progress. The FDA, I know many of you that are involved in the pharmaceutical end of hemp production are having fits with the FDA. That's going to be our next big obstacle, is dealing with the FDA. So we're going to keep working to try to have open dialogue with these government bureaucracies, and hope that we can continue to make progress and continue to grow the industry. Just some current statistics. In 2014, in Kentucky, we had 20 growers grow around 33 acres. That was the first year it was legal to grow hemp in Kentucky. This year, we have 121 growers growing 1,742 acres, including 7 universities in the state of Kentucky. The first year, we tried to get UK to do it. University of Kentucky didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. In fact, they had an economic impact study. I know we have UK people here, and I appreciate you. I'm going to brag on you. Just bear with me. Let me criticize you first. They had an economic impact study that somehow they said there's only going to be 10 jobs created with hemp. It's not worth it. We have hundreds of people employed in the industrial hemp industry in the state this year, and next year it's going to be thousands of people employed in Kentucky. But 7 universities now. UK has many companies that are represented here partnering with them on research and development. Now they love hemp. They can't get enough hemp. And 6 other universities are going hemp. In fact, I've had deans from universities, Dr. Brandon, Murray State are here, and they're recruiting students to their universities from other states and other countries because they want to research hemp. They realize the potential of this crop. So this has been a great thing for the universities in the state. As of today, we have 24 processors involved in our pilot program doing research and development as well as commercialization. In the future, I think we're going to go from 1,700 acres to 10,000 acres, to 20,000 acres, to 40,000 acres. This is going to be a big crop in the state of Kentucky. We're going to go from 24 processors to hopefully 100 processors. Hopefully we're going to be making things that range from parts to the automotive industry, to parts and pieces in the construction industry, to pharmaceuticals. This is going to be the epicenter of industrial hemp production in America. That's my vision, and that's only going to be a reality because of the people in this room, the Vote Hemp, the Kentucky, the Industrial Hemp Authority, all the hemp groups, all the pioneers that were mentioned from Gatewood to Governor Nunn, who was a friend of mine, all these people that have worked together. We can make this a reality. And in conclusion, I want to thank you for being a leader in this movement. This is something that we've overcome every obstacle, from educating the public to educating the political leaders to educating the media to make this a reality. Now is our opportunity to prove that this was a battle worth fighting, that this is economically viable, that we can not only create enormous economic activity, but we can make our country more sustainable by producing products in a more sustainable manner with a more sustainable crop, and that crop's industrial hemp. Thank you for your support and friendship. We look forward to working with you in the future.
I just wanted to, on behalf of the Hemp Industries Association, we'd like to present an award to you for leadership. Commissioner Comer, your leadership is what made this happen here and is making this industry possible in the United States again. And we thank you so much for your help.